G'day everybody, Chaotic here, and this is my beginner to expert breeding guide. In this guide, I aim to show you how to breed super powerful creatures from the taming process straight up to the stat cap for the ultimate power. Breeding is a complex subject, and it's okay not to understand it right away. I recommend watching this whole video at least once, and then down below you will see chapters so you can skip through to the parts you need to rewatch in order to better understand this process. Every creature in Ark will spawn in at a random level based off some math and your server difficulty. Once a creature is spawned in and its levels have been assigned to it, a creature will then divide all of its current levels -1 to all of its stats at random. A creature that spawns in at level 150 will have 149 points to assign at random to every stat. The reason for 149 points is because at level 1 it has nothing but its base stats. Some stats are hidden though and cannot be seen via the menu. Movement speed is one such stat, and any levels that go into movement speed have no effect on both tamed and wild creatures, and it is considered a wasted stat. Although you can add levels to movement speed from experience gain levels to increase your creature's speed. Flyers, however, are the only ones who do not gain any movement speed in any of these processes. The only way to see endgame before taming is to knock out the creature or use HLNA on the Genesis maps to see what its stats are, and use apps such as Dododex by picking your creature on the app and inputting all of its stats, where there it will calculate its distributed points. For tame creatures, you can only see its stats levels accurately with an egg incubator on eggs, or for gestation on mammals via the gestation monitor buff. Once a creature is tamed, it will gain new bonus levels from the taming effectiveness, and these will be randomly distributed to all of its stats. Melee will gain even more of a bonus based on the taming effectiveness and the bonus levels it's gained. The level of a dino after it is tamed no longer matters, and the only important thing is its stats and where they are located. A level 100 dino with 50 points in the health and 50 points in the melee will beat a level 224 dino with 20 points in the health and 20 points in the melee. To increase taming effectiveness, you will need to make sure that the creature doesn't get hit after it's been knocked out, and in the case of passive tames, nothing interrupts the taming process from start to finish. You will also need to use the best taming food for that creature to give it the best possible outcome from eating it. This information can also be found on Dododex. The Desmodeus is a creature that was introduced with the Fjordor map, and it harvests blood packs from attacking creatures. These can then be used to make a taming elixir within its inventory. The elixir will give an instant 30% taming affinity when used on a knocked out creature. This will help you not only tame it up faster, but will also keep the taming effectiveness higher when it tames up. There is also both a stat cap and a level cap in Ark. The level cap is for official servers and unofficial servers that have it turned on. The stat cap, however, is hard-coded and cannot be turned on or off or even altered. Okay, now that you know the stats, it's time to go tame your dinos. So, we tame dinos to do different jobs for us. Some are for travel, others to harvest materials, and some to fight for us. The types of stats you'll want to look for will vary depending on what you plan on doing with that creature. If you're looking to kill bosses, the creatures you will want will be the best health and melee. Or if you're looking to travel or harvest, then stamina and weight will play a large part in your search too. Once you find your target and if you can knock it out, or if you're on the Genesis maps, you can use HLNA's scan ability to see the stats, and then apply them to Dododex. If the stats you want are super low in level, generally lower than level 20, there really isn't any point in wasting your time taming it. Every creature's stats will vary, and what is best will change from species to species. So the best way to know what your great stat will be to use the incubator and see how many levels it got. I'll go over this more later on. You will want to continue taming lots and lots and lots of creatures to get the best possible stats you can find, to give you the best head start before mutating. I tend to try to tame level 120 and higher. If you happen to be on an official server or one with a level cap, you'll also want to lower your dino's level by taming low-level dinos and punching their effectiveness to 0. This way you will have the stats you don't want at 0 levels or near 0 levels after tame. Now that you have your dinos with its best and worst stats if you're on a level cap server, it's time to start breeding and get all those stats into one creature. In order to breed, you must put your male and your female next to each other and hold your option button, default E on PC, and select behavior and enable mating. Once they have laid an egg, you can pick it up and take it to where you want to hatch it. Some eggs require heat and some require cooling off. Every species has its own temperature requirements. The egg will tell you if it's too hot or too cold on the ground, and apply the necessary changes to get it to hatch before it dies. You can use the environment to try and hatch them by moving the eggs to a hotter or cooler area. You can also use campfires, torches, etc. to create heat to warm up the cold eggs. Additionally, some creatures like the Dimetrodon or even otters can hatch eggs for you based off how high their melee is and will add both heat and cold to a small area. The easy way to hatch eggs is to build air conditioners, as they apply both heat and cooling to an area. But some eggs require a lot. The rock drake eggs take up to 22 air conditioners. But the absolute best way to hatch an egg is to use the egg incubator, and it is only learnable on Genesis Part 1, Part 2, Lost Island, and Fjordle. You can adjust the temperature via the menu, and you can use that to hatch eggs faster. But if you use it for different species at the same time, it may slow down some eggs. For mammal breeding, it's just let them mate and wait for the babies to gestate and to be birthed. The egg incubator shows the stats on a baby, making it very easy to quickly identify if they are good or not before even hatching the egg. Or in the case of mammals, you can hold your option button on the incubator and enable the gestation monitor buff. From there, you can go to your female, hold your option button again, and enable the gestation monitor on that creature. You can then look at her and see the stats, and if you don't like them, you can then proceed to open the menu and reset the gestation to put her back on the mating cooldown. Once you have a baby, you imprint on it by pressing your action button, and while it grows up, you'll need to feed it in its inventory until 10%. And from there it'll eat out of a food truck. The way around this is by using a Maywing. You can use it to feed the babies via its inventory from birth to grown. Be sure to turn it on in the menu of the Maywing. As a baby grows up, it'll ask for additional imprints. Most of us call this a cuddle timer. Each baby will require a random task to give it an imprint percentage. And if you get an imprint that you're unable to give because you don't have the required item, you can use a cryopod to reset it. This forces the baby to change it to something else. Proceed with this process until it asks for something you can give it. You should only do imprinting on dinos you want to use for various tasks, and do not imprint breeding dinos so you can easily keep track of their stats. Imprinting will increase the health, melee, etc. by a percentage based on the current imprint percentage it has gotten. The imprint doesn't increase levels, it only changes how much those levels give to the stat. Imprinted stats are not passed down, and any babies it produces will not have the stat increase, and they will just revert back to the parent's original stats. Now that you know all of that, we can finally get to work on combining the stats. I'll be using my theory line I have bred up on my cluster series to show you the steps you need to take. First, you'll need to pick the stats you want, and on these theories I want the highest melee, health, stamina, and weight. My highest melee is 402.2%. My highest health is 7,656.1. My highest stamina is 1,350, and my highest weight is 613.2. Now that we have picked those, we now have two options based on if you can or even have the time to do it.
My schedule wouldn't allow it.
Mutagen and Mutagel is a Gen 2 only resource where you can harvest it from a few sources on the map. One is the space biome, on a Mutagel day where you can harvest these snot looking rocks for it. Or you can go to Rockwell's Inners where you can find plants on the ground that give mutagen, or at the very back of the biome under the boss terminal you can use a mining drill or a strider to harvest the mutagel there. If you harvest the mutagel, you'll have to convert it in a chemistry bench. It takes 800 mutagel to craft 6 mutagen. The amount needed will vary on the species, and it's an absolute pain to get. But once you apply it, your creature will gain 5 levels into health, stamina, weight, and melee. This has to be done on the tame dinos before breeding, or the new levels will not pass down to the next generation. Now, I didn't do that with these theories at the time because I didn't have enough and I decided to carry on without it. But if I did, my theories would have been 5 levels into those stats higher, and it is absolutely worth doing it on slower breeding settings. Combining stats is an amazing way to make your creature incredibly powerful. Even if you only do this step, you will see a massive difference in your tames. With our previously picked stats, we can start the long process of combining the stats into one dino. I have 4 male dinos with the best stats on us, and this makes starting off a little tricky because the males can't lay eggs. I pick one of my lesser females to start breeding with the health male. I then breed them together until I get a female with the health. I grow her up, and then I breed her with a melee male until I get a female with both the health and melee stat. I then grow that one up to breed her with the weight male until they finally produce a male with all 3 of those stats. And then I finally breed that one with the male that has stamina until I get a female with all 4 of those stats. I then breed her with the father until I get a male with identical stats and levels. These now form my base pair. Make sure as you do this that none of these babies have gotten a mutation. You can check by clicking on the show ancestors at the bottom of the stats and look at the parental or maternal sides and see that both have 020 on them. Once they are grown and ready, you can breed them together and get yourself a combined stats dino to use for your daily things. While this creature grows up, imprint it and gain its full potential. Now for the longest process. This one isn't for the faint of heart, and it will take dedication, especially on slower breeding settings. But first, let's go over the basics. Mutations are a percentage chance that happens from both mom and dad that give the baby one color change and one stat increase by 2 levels. These mutations sometimes can't be seen, as you can't see movement speed, and a lot of dinos only show some color regions. But the mutations still go to those that you can't see, unfortunately. There are chances, though very rare, it will gain a double mutation, and even rarer yet, a triple mutation. I have never seen a triple mutation ever. It's that rare, and I've done thousands of mutations over the years. When a double mutation does happen, the baby gains both 2 stats and color mutations. This can be in any 2 stats and not very often the same stat. If you're not using an egg incubator, this can be tricky in identifying where these stats landed, because if it lands on a movement speed, you cannot see it and will have to check the other stats to confirm where it went and use Dododex calculators to see if you got 4 levels into one stat or just 2. If this is on melee, you can't even do that, as the math doesn't work on Dododex due to the increase to melee based on taming effectiveness, and Dododex doesn't yet calculate that. There is an app called Smart Breeder though. I've never used it, but the app does do this if you want to check it out. Mutations also have a soft cap of 20. What that means is that after 20 mutations on either side of the baby's tree, it will no longer produce mutations. You counter this by always breeding it with a 020 mutations mate. Every time a baby gains a new mutation, this counter will go up by 1. As long as you breed it with a non-mutated mate, it will only ever go up by 1 per mutation. But if you were to breed a mutation with a mutation, that counter would go up by ever how many mutations counters are on both of them. So if you have 5 mutations on one and 2 on the other, it will be 7 on the baby, and it will not increase its stats, but it will put it closer to that soft cap. So never breed a mutation with a mutation when looking for mutations. Once you hit the soft cap, you can continue doing more mutations with the non-mutated mates, all the way to the stat cap. But after it hits 20, it only gains mutations from the non-mutated parent, and thus cutting the chance of a mutation by more than half. Some people stopped at 20 mutations on a stat, but some crazy people enjoy the challenge of stat capping dinos, and occasionally I am one of those crazy people. Now, in saying all of that, you honestly don't need to know much more than I'm going to tell you from this point on. And if you just do as I say, here and now, you will have no problems breeding up your first super dino. Step 1. Take your stats male and female and breed until you have lots of females. How many? Well, that depends on how much you can handle via your hardware's capabilities or your own ability to manage them. Another factor is how fast or slow your breeding settings are. For my cluster, the rates are really fast. I can pop out thousands of eggs per hour, and I only need 1 male and 1 female. But on my Fjordor server, I have slower breeding settings at this time, and I have a couple of dozen females to get eggs. More eggs equals more chances for mutations. You need to make sure that every female you get doesn't have a mutation on it by seeing if it's 2 levels higher than the parents and checking the mutation counter. If it does have a mutation, check to see if it has a stat you want, and if it is, keep it for step 3. If you're still getting random levels between your babies, you have the stats wrong on the parents, and they probably have different movement speed levels. And you need to correct this here and now before continuing on. Step 2. After gaining more and more females, it's time to look for your first mutation, preferably male on the slower breeding settings. Once you see a baby with +2, or rarely +4 or +6 levels, check to see where they landed, and if it's even on the stat you want. In this case, we're looking for health, and we're going to put it to the side and wait for it to grow up. Look for another baby and find a melee mutation, and so on and so forth until you have every stat you want to mutate on separate babies. These babies will be called mutation lines. If your baby mutation is a female, you now have two options: keep it and raise it up, or kill it and look for a new one that is a male. I personally keep my females and keep breeding for a male until it grows up. Once the female grows up, breed it with your original stats male until it gives you a baby with the exact same stats as the female, or if you're really lucky, your next mutation. And that'll be +2 levels higher than the previous mutation on the parent, and in the exact same stat. Or if you find a male while it's growing up, you can kill off the female and grow up the male to mate with your females. Step 3. Grow up your mutation male, and once it's grown, remove your original stats male from your females and put him off to the side and keep him safe. You will need him later depending on your choices and if you have to replace any of your imprinted dinos from him. Take your mutations male and breed him with the females until you get a new baby with +2 more levels from your previous mutation male that increases the stat you're looking for. Step 4. Continue this process over and over again, looking for the exact same stat to increase all the way up to 20 mutations or more if you want to. And once you're satisfied with that, repeat step 3 for the next stat you want to increase and go as far as you want on it, and so on and so forth for every stat you want to mutate. Step 5. Now that you have all your separate lines mutated, it's time to combine their stats. And this is the same process from before. For my theories, I got 20 health and 20 melee mutations. I want to breed those two together until I get a male and a female baby with both of those new mutated stats together. This will now be my new base pair for growing and imprinting creatures for gathering or fighting bosses or whatever it is you want to do with them. Step 6. Take your new mutated monsters for a test spin and kill everything to see how much better your new creatures are. On average, you only need 20 mutations into each of the stats to fight most bosses on any difficulty. But the better the stats, the easier those fights get. Remember, great high armor saddles go a long way to help too. If you need any further help, please feel free to leave a comment down below or even join my Discord and I can help you even more from there. I hope this helped, and if it did, leave a like, and hey, check out my 100 days to kill the savage acro, and you'll see how good breeding truly is. Bye!